What happens when a seasoned entrepreneur replaces paperwork with powerful automation? We'll find out as we sit down with Joe Craparotta, who's turned digital forms into a $30,000 a year savings, a scalable QMS platform, and a thriving passive income stream, all powered by Jotform Enterprise. Welcome to Momentum, a podcast by Jotform where we talk about the technology, productivity tips, insights, and best practices that help us move forward in business and in life. Let's get started.
3, 2, 1. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Maintaining momentum. Hi, Joe. So nice to meet you, and so nice to have you on the show. I'm so excited to hear your story.
Yeah, I'm pleased to be here. It's great to be able to kind of share my story with you and other fellow Jotform people, and looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for being on. I can't thank you enough for coming on to share all of the insights that you've gleaned over 17 years using Jotform. That is insane.
Yeah.
Almost since the very beginning. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, no, I found it somehow, and I kind of jumped onto it. I saw that it was very intelligent. It had good flow to it. I was able to kind of solve some problems real quickly, and I didn't need to kind of go to the traditional route of having described my product to a developer and go from there. So I was able to kind of go in, demonstrate it to the whoever I wanted to give the hack to or the form to, and they could test it out. I could get some feedback, I could change it, and start the flows. So it was a great product to find.
Yeah. It's crazy that it's we have kind of grown up together over the years. Let me just let's dive straight into your journey and the businesses that you've run over the years.
Yeah. So at the time that I was in the space of e-commerce and kind of becoming a pioneer, there weren't any applications that could launch products to the marketplace. So I built my own. And so with that process, you needed to hit the front end of the marketplace to get the final transaction. So we were basically scraping the front end of these websites like eBay and half.com and some of the early entry marketplaces to form this kind of system that was able to aggregate all the inventory, images and assets, publish them, and then create pick tickets and all the organization and do all the fulfillment and shipping and so forth. So it was a pretty intricate process of building that out, but it was a long process of doing it, very labor intensive, very expensive. If you weren't kind of leading the pack, you kind of got left behind a little bit. And what we had to do at some point was you needed to qualify to talk to these larger companies like PayPal and eBay. So they started to get a little smarter and said, hey, listen, if you want to talk to us, you need to do it on our back end servers and, adhere to some standards. So I learned a lot of process because you needed to kind of learn how to talk to different systems. And so, it gave me a background that just made me kind of engineer a lot of solutions that I've done today,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. And you were able to connect Jotform to that API, be able to set it all up through Jotform?
No, I would say so. The easiest things that I did with Jotform just to start was I had an operation that did distribution, but they were walk-in centers. So they were basically like retail shops. And our client had its own point of sale system. And when I started opening up these operations, I needed to give clear instructions to my managers on how to reconcile the drawer. This was a lot of cash that was going through the operation. And I couldn't really, reconcile in the point of sale system because it didn't really have reconciliation, process in there. So I needed to build my own reconciliation process. So Jotform, through all the widgets and components that are in it, I was able to do calculations and be able to kind of mitigate some of the process or some of the problems that we were having, which was just having a cashier understanding how to correctly balance their drawer at the end of the day. And before implementing Jotform, it probably took an hour of the manager's time at the end of the day to complete these reports, because we were just putting it on paper and we were faxing or emailing and scanning and emailing, and nothing really flowed very well. So a form is just a form, but you can also integrate work instructions into it. So if like what we do is we put a little checkbox and we say, would you like to see the work instructions? So if you're a new user, you're going to open that box and you're going to look at, like, how do I do this? What information do they want in each field? And so that's very useful. So I think that was kind of why we kept building out on it. But we also implemented what most businesses call a QMS system, a quality management system. So in a quality management system, you start with SOPs, you do the work instructions, but you also include the forms. So when you build out all that, your whole staff has a good, clear picture on how to do things. So when somebody asks in the operation, I don't know how to do something, if you got the resources available, you can just say, oh, let me show you how to find it yourself and search it, and maybe educate yourself further on other things that you might be tasked with doing with. So Jotform fills that need, for businesses. The biggest thing I think that I was able to build with Jotform was during the conversion of like the crisis that happened like in 2020 and through 22, a lot of businesses couldn't have people in their stores, or they didn't want to have the risk of having a customer in the store. The operation that I ran was able to operate because it was a logistics business, but it also had food products. So we were able to stay open. So I used Jotform as the front end to create a curbside application. So the clients could say, hey, I got these 10 orders to pick up. And we used Jotform to capture that information. And then I connected a lot of different sources through the APIs. A lot of it was using Zapier to kind of do the triggers and put together an MVP product with it. So, it's a lot of people maybe think that Jotform is just forms, but you guys have really put a lot on the back end and a lot of integrations that are native, or at least you've established what like eBay did, which is, connect to partners and have a standard and do it safely. So the beginning of the process was intake the customer order. And then what we would do is we put that into a database. There's an online database that I use that was just kind of coming online called Airtable. So I landed all the process into Airtable. And then within Airtable, I would use Zapier to trigger some events. So I put in an SMS messaging service to it, and we would notify the customer at times like, we've received your order. It's now being processed. It's now available for pickup. And so those processes just helped kind of people understand, I got your order, everything's going to be fine. We're working on it. And then, it's completed. And even my staff was able to, use their phones to go out to the cars, log in their order numbers, and it would trigger a printer to print out the order that the customer's waiting out there. We put in the license plate, part of the license plate, and we could identify who's going to receive the order. So Jotform really came in key, and that's why I moved to an enterprise server in 2019. Was I began to do so many transactions. And I think I was just kind of on maybe your central server. And I felt like if I went to the enterprise version, I'd be able to have as much traffic as I needed. So we actually put up 14 sites, and they say we were probably doing 1,500 orders a day, and it really kind of saved it. And since then, we built out the product, or our client built the product out. It was called Advanced Will Call, and the client had built out, from my engineering of it, their own product that can kind of fit inside their operation. So it's in their own environment and secure, and it's their customer data, of course.
That's an amazing story. Like, I feel like a lot of companies were kind of put into that, like thrust into that same position where, all those old paper forms, had to go online. All of their processes had to go online out of necessity because of COVID and everything that went on at that point.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, so when we were moving real quickly, I noticed that, you guys had GDRP, which is a compliance standard, and, it's a way to govern the data. And our client was saying, well, where are you storing this stuff? Is it compliant? And Jotform passed all the tests. In fact, I even reached out, I think, to your CEO, and he got back and said, this is how we store the data. This is what we do. And so with that information, I was able to continue the process, and they were comfortable with going forward with it. So, and on top of that, the Airtable had the standards that were needed. So it really kind of fit together. But had I picked other providers that didn't have standards or maybe didn't have a redundant system, like I'm sure Jotform has probably redundant servers across the world because I know you guys are everywhere. So the failure rate of a system like Jotform is not very great. So it's nice to be part of that. And that's why I've stayed with it for such a long time. Yeah.
And you were 2019, that would have been right after we started Jotform Enterprise. So not only were you there at the beginning when we were just starting out, but also right at the beginning of Enterprise. So, yeah.
Right. And Tolga had sold me the system, and we needed to migrate the instance, the standard instance into the enterprise thing. So they moved it, and it was nice. I didn't have to recreate any of the process that I already did in the first version of it. So I think that's nice for any of your customers. You start out simple, and then as your needs grow, you kind of move up in tiers. And when you're ready for enterprise, you jump over to the enterprise. And any startup, I think it's a good process, to have. It's the tiered pricing helps you kind of be able to afford it.
Yeah, slowly moving up as your business grows. How would you say that jumping over to Jotform and digital forms, how did that improve your workflow?
Well, like I had referenced before, we were scanning and faxing, and, it wasn't putting things into a database. So when you put it through a form, you'd have it land into a database. And so you could do calculations on it, and it wasn't static stuff that you just print out and put in a folder. When you the cache operation, there were several drops that happened throughout the day. And when mistakes were made, you could go and kind of zero in on your time of day that maybe the mistake happened. So as you collect all this data, you can really focus in on an investigation about where was the mistake made. So without having your data into a database to query and reference, you couldn't really get a clear picture. You just say, I think this is what happened. And then you spend hours and hours looking through a folder of, static papers, and it just ate up a lot of time. And I was on the road a lot. We were really, a smaller company, and we grew as we went along. But I could go into a hotel and open it up and look at the data. I had it all there for me, and I didn't have to be in the office. So it was great.
Yeah. I know you mentioned that you had saved a significant amount of money when I was reading over your case study. Can you break down how that worked and how implementing the automations saved you so much?
Yeah. So the cash management was part of this big, we thought that maybe it was about $30,000 a year that we didn't have to chase after. It really, that was part of it. But then the latest thing that I've been working on is helping the Michigan growers figure out how to stay compliant. And so I took your forms, or the Jot forms, and I was able to create some QR codes and make a visual workboard for the operation. So every task that they have to do in the operation can be put on a visual workboard. And when they scan the code, they can get the work instructions, and they can put in the data that needs to go in. So There's a bigger software system that the data has to go into, but Jotform serves as this kind of like workflow that the subject matter expert will get. They can either work from an email or they can work from a spreadsheet where the data's landing in, and they can review the inputs for accuracy and put it into the system so that it's totally correct. So in this growing industry, it's helped out a lot because a lot of people just are doing it from paper forms, and there's a lot of like soil and hot environment. It's not conducive to paper, and so moving a companies into that helped them out significantly. And one of the clients claims that he reduced his operational cost by 20% by doing it, and he freed up his time, and he actually has optimized his labor. So his labor hours have gone down significantly since putting in a process. Again, it's like just going from no real process to a process, and it really helped with scheduling the right amount of people for the right day. So without having a clear picture of capturing data and knowing how long tasks take, a lot of times the growers will overschedule people, and people is really their most expensive part of the process. So also you could use Jotform to do reviews and educate and so forth. So when you get a system in place as opposed to not having a system, you're going to start to create some best practices that you can look at and say, every quarter and say, are all these forms capturing the information that we need? Are all these forms getting to the right subject matter expert? Can we take this data and put it in a business intelligence machine and do a report that will give us a clear picture on what's happening? So you really, in the absence of paper and trying to make sense of somebody's writing and getting it in the old way, putting it into a database or putting it into spreadsheets is the way to go, and it will reduce your costs. Just basically kind of like organizing your desk, you know what I mean? Or your closet. Like if you don't have it organized, you're not going to find that shirt that you're looking for, or, on your desk, you can't find the stapler. By having a system, and it's what informs from Jotform is part of the system. If you don't have that good capture of information, even within a form, you can put guardrails on there. Like if, let's say you're expecting a value between, 4 pounds and 2 pounds and 1 pound, you can say it in the form that I won't accept the value outside of this range. So the data entry, problem is mitigated by, somebody typing a huge value in there. So you can put a lot of conditions into the Jotform that'll really make it brilliant when it's published and used.
And you're talking about your new venture, right, which is Point A. Do you want to kind of describe what Point A is and what the impetus was for you to kind of take on that new venture?
Yeah, so it's basically a way just to stay compliant. And it's also giving businesses a roadmap of the full QMS picture. So you could use it as just like your process flow and use it for reviewing your data entry before it goes into the main system. But it will give businesses a complete kind of like structure to work from. A lot of small businesses or, medium-sized businesses don't document what they're doing. And it's not a situation that's good if somebody leaves. So I think Point A is kind of the company that's going to say, hey, how are you doing it today? Are you getting all the information the right way? Do you need DocuSign documents? How are you intaking things? And we can work as a consultant, but we've already built out a pretty good process. Maybe we could possibly, connect it directly to the software. But I think right now it's a good intermediary step for what we're doing today with Point A, just to give, growers an easy process. And we can deliver a cloned form that we've already produced, and then they can further modify it if they request it from us. So we can really tailor it to how they do their operation, rather than just giving them something that's already pressed into an application and it just having to stay there until developers go through a long process to change it.
Mm-hmm. And you can kind of tweak that on the fly as you're going along and, cater it to each individual growers.
Yep.
And do you don't use that through an app, or is that because I know you have to scan the QR codes and then it just goes to a form?
Well, I delivered some apps to them, and I divided them up by segments. And so there was like a cultivation app, there's safety and security app, and so forth. And they can, download and put it on their phone. But most of them are like, I like the visualization. I like having a team huddle and saying, hey, let's show you what's happening in a full week. And I know you could probably accomplish that from a monitor or something like that. But these magnetic tags that I created, you can just kind of move them around. I mean, things do change. And so you may have to just move it. And so to go sit down, log in, make sure you moved it the right way and updated it, it can be really difficult to do. So the way that this kind of system kind of evolved was really driven by the customer. Like, I don't necessarily need an app. I don't want to look through and try to find the particular task that I'm doing. I'd rather just have it on the board from the management and then know that I'm on this particular day and date and scan it, and it goes directly to it. The feedback that I've gotten is just like, hey, it's simple, it works. It's divided the workflow up for me. I have more time to focus on the things that matter. And that's where we're going with it. And the clients have loved it. I've got like 2 clients on it right now, and we've got a 3rd coming on.
You created the systems for them in Jotform Enterprise and then kind of built out the forms that they would need for different specific use cases, right? And then you create the QR codes, and then they just scan those QR codes, and then they can look at everything on their end through the tables and stuff.
Yeah. So inside of the Enterprise suite, you have workspaces. So if I bring on a new client, I'll load them into their own workspace. So they have a filtered view of just their forms. And then from there, I will generate a QR code that you can use your phone and be able to, forward yourself to the form. It's not launching a space shuttle. It's very, very, very simple, but it's just, you need to have the right information into there, and you need to, connect. Maybe you want to put it onto Google Sheets, or maybe you want to put it into Microsoft Office, and you have every transaction kind of land into a spreadsheet for people.
Yeah, really simplifies the process. And I would assume that really helps with compliance as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. You can just, go into the log and it's in your Google Sheets or, Excel sheets, or you got a backup of also having your data stored on the Jotform system. So if you have to kind of requery it or download it again because you messed up something in your other, spreadsheet or whatever, you can go back and get it.
Yeah. Having that access to information all the time, like you said, definitely saves you time, effort, trying to dig through and find all of that information. And like you said, paper forms are not exactly great for growing operations and places that are covered in dirt and water and humidity. And yeah. I guess switching gears a little bit, you've been with Jotform for 17 years, so it's kind of a no-brainer that you ended up joining our agency program. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you first discovered our agency program and what made you decide to join in the first place?
Yeah. So when I sold out my equity in Current Resource Group, and I was kind of looking for different things to do, and I wanted to start building out process for other businesses. So I bought an enterprise version, and then I saw that you had a reseller program, and I'm like, well, maybe I join that, and maybe I'll start to put up a website, and I'll figure out, if I can attract an audience. So my mission going forward is to kind of share kind of what I've done with the product in greater detail, maybe on my website, or maybe doing a podcast in the future of my own, but trying to give people an understanding of why you need to stay organized, and maybe give them a basis of how to stay organized, and further go through the whole process of building out yourself a QMS, because that is very important. You need to have a quality management system in place You can describe how you do business, and you need to review that every so often and make sure that it's, that it's sound and it's operating correctly, and make those little incremental improvements, and you'll keep ahead of your competition, and you'll control your costs, and you'll control your waste.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would say at this point, you probably know Jotform better than 90% of Jotformers. Like, people are working at the company after 17 years of using it.
Well, I tell you, I've used your support, and they've been very helpful. Like, they'll inject some code into the forms to make them even like more supercharged. So like, let's say, you created a form in Jotform that you have in your library, and I have some widgets and tools. If those widgets and tools aren't filling my need, I've asked your developers, like, hey, can you give me some more information on how I can change this form? And somebody sends me a short little snippet of code, put it in the area, and it works, and it helps out a ton. So I think I need to use them more often, because they are really, really a quick way to get something done. So I'm looking forward to probably passing things over, but the response time has been incredible when I've needed it.
Yeah, that's so cool to hear. What other features would you say you're using within Jotform Enterprise? Like, what kind of widgets and integrations are you using? Things that you've found helpful?
Well, I think the biggest thing was getting it, pushed into a database, which is nice, because then you can kind of act like it's a real application. But I can't believe the presentation product that you just released, I think, is incredible. I think it's going to help kind of become more of a go-to stop for people in business to go to maybe store their RFPs and store all their pricing data and so forth, so that you can kind of produce things quicker for a prospect or a customer. So I'm looking forward to looking into those areas. But I think Jotform is kind of evolving into what like Excel is. It's like nobody could be a complete expert in Excel. There's so many features into it, and I think you're kind of getting there, but you haven't overbuilt products, but you built just enough products, I think, that are useful, and somebody's thinking, I think, through these things, and I think it's very thoughtful. And maybe your founder has got those roots that keeps putting it into the products.
Yeah, it's just kind of a continual, just trying to find ways to make it a little bit better and a little bit more useful. It's kind of it's a sticky product, it kind of, once it gets in there, you kind of find 1,000 other ways to use it. Usually people start with one kind of use, and then they just start diving deeper and deeper into it. And you mentioned the presentation tool. Are you using any of the AI tools that we've recently launched?
We just turned it on, and we're experimenting with it. So we're getting familiar with it and trying to, see if we can build out some, process with it. And I think it's going to be probably something that we use to market the Point A product. And I think if our clients want to be marketed, maybe, they could use it too. Looks like you can kind of push something out to Facebook quickly and Instagram, or, you have a SMS messaging built into it somehow. So we're going to experiment, see how it works. Our client may ask us to do something, and we'll look inside and see if we can deliver it, from our enterprise version.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How many growers are you working with now, would you say?
Just a couple right now, but we've gotten a lot of people interested. And once they kind of do a tour of like what's happening, they're like, wow, this is really great. I'll free up my time. And those badges that I'm talking about that you can put on a visual workboard, here's another use case or whatever. If you're going to go in and look at your security surveillance, tape. You need to document that you've done that. So you put that little magnetic, badge on the IT room door that, is the spot to review the video. And so the person, before they enter the room, scans it, they have it up on their phone, and they document, I'm looking in on this particular day because I think something had happened. We lost a package or something's gone wrong. They log it. So you can kind of put around your organization a bunch of these little things that link you right into, I better explain this situation. So whatever you could think of, if you put it next to the workstation, or you put it next to the place that the task is being done, either people can look at the work instructions quickly, or they can go and input the information and notify their boss or, the whole organization that there's this, situation.
Yeah. I love that. Like every time I talk to a Jotform user, I hear some way of using Jotform that I never would have thought of. That's one of them, like being able to use it to kind of log security and figure out all that kind of stuff.
They're using it for visitor sign in and visitor sign out. So rather than having that paper copy there that never kind of gets data entered into your system, you should have it maybe organized, and you can kind of look back. What day did that person visit? What was going on? You can even take a picture of something that might be interesting. Like, let's say you have a contractor, an HVAC person that has to do some work. And, you say, well, you have the work order that you created? Well, why don't I just, on your visit, take a photo of that, and that way it goes in. And so the booking, the billing department will know, hey, I see what work, happened, and I see at what day it happened. So now you can say with, assurance that HVAC guy came out on, January 3rd, and here's what he wrote up. Maybe you want to take a picture of the broken part. All the inventory and equipment that you can log through a form is incredible. That, if you think about it and you want to be process oriented, document. You can go back and find it. You can search for it and get it. It's great.
That's great advice for any company, really. I think that's a great place to end on. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. And you have any parting words of wisdom for the people out there who might be looking at similar situations?
Yeah, I just think that we're in a new era of this AI thing, and you got to be nimble and fast. And maybe if you build a business, maybe your window's only a couple of years of success, as opposed to saying, I'm going to be in business for 17 years or, so, maybe you guys have to look at it as like, hey, my goal is, making a profit, within the first year, and then, maybe exiting in 4 years, whether you're looking at somebody buying your company or you're looking at scaling even more, you got to just keep, scaling up, hitting the best practices, making incremental improvements over time. If you focus on that, I think you're going to be successful.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Joe. I really appreciate it. A lot of insights, a lot of great information, and a lot of good advice for similar entrepreneurs and people who are in the same situation. And, if Jotform can help, great. Seems like it's really helped your processes over the years. But it was so cool to hear your journey and how Jotform has helped kind of foster things along the way. And thank you again.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me on your show. Appreciate it.